The letter arrived on a Tuesday, its edges worn, the handwriting unmistakably his father's, sharp, deliberate, like a blade slicing through time. For Ethan Harper, 27 and hardened by years of silence, it was a grenade lobbed into his carefully rebuilt life. He stood in his cramped Brooklyn apartment, staring at the words, "Join us for a family vacation in the Adirondacks." "Please, son." Ethan's breath caught. His father, Richard Harper, hadn't spoken to him in 6 years. Not since Ethan, at 21, had sat across from him at their polished oak dining table in suburban Connecticut and said, "Dad, I'm gay." Richard's face had frozen, his jaw tight, his eyes narrowing as if Ethan had confessed to a crime. "You're confused," he'd said, voice low and final. "You're not my son if you choose this." That night, Ethan packed a bag and left, the door slamming shut on his childhood. His mother's tearful pleas couldn't bridge the chasm. His sister's texts dwindled over time. The Harpers, once his anchor, became ghosts. Now this, a family vacation? The audacity burned. Ethan tossed the letter onto the counter, where it landed beside a photo of him and Lucas, his boyfriend of 2 years. Lucas, with his warm hazel eyes and quiet strength, had taught Ethan to trust again. But this invitation, it was a crack in the dam Ethan had built to hold back his past. Why now? What did Richard want? He called Lucas, who was finishing a shift at the community center where he counseled at-risk teens. "My dad sent a letter," Ethan said, voice tight. "He wanted me to go on some family trip. Upstate. A cabin, probably. You know how he is. Everything's a performance." Lucas's voice was steady, grounding. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." Ethan paced, his sneakers scuffing the hardwood. "I want to burn it. I want to scream at him. But what if he's changed?" The question hung heavy, fragile. Ethan didn't believe in miracles, but the letter felt like a dare. Lucas arrived an hour later, his dark hair damp from the spring rain. He read the letter silently, then looked up. "This could be closure, Ethan, or a chance. But only if you're ready." Ethan wasn't ready. Not for his father's cold stare, his mother's nervous hovering, or his sister's awkward attempts at reconciliation. But the idea of facing them, of standing tall as the man he'd become, sparked something fierce in him. "I'll go," he said finally, "but you're coming with me." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Your dad doesn't exactly scream progressive." "I don't care. If he wants me there, he gets us both." Ethan's voice was firm, but his hands trembled. Lucas took them, his touch a quiet promise. 2 weeks later, they drove north in Lucas's beat-up Subaru, the Adirondacks rising like a green fortress against the sky. Ethan's stomach churned with every mile. He hadn't responded to the letter, hadn't called, hadn't texted. Let Richard sweat, he thought. Let him wonder if I'll show. The cabin was exactly as Ethan imagined. Rustic, sprawling, perched on a lake that mirrored the pines. Richard's SUV was parked out front, alongside his sister Emily's Prius. Ethan's heart thudded as he stepped out, Lucas at his side. The air smelled of damp earth and cedar, sharp and clean. The front door swung open before they reached it. Richard stood there, taller than Ethan remembered, his hair grayer, his face lined but still stern. "Ethan," he said, voice neutral. His eyes flicked to Lucas, lingering a moment too long. "Dad," Ethan replied, his tone clipped. "This is Lucas, my boyfriend." Richard's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Come in. Your mother's been waiting." Inside, the cabin was warm, all wood and soft light. Ethan's mother, Claire, rushed forward, her arms enveloping him in a hug that felt both desperate and fragile. "Oh, Ethan," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You're here." Emily, now 23, hovered nearby, her smile hesitant. "Hey, big brother." She glanced at Lucas, her expression softening. "Nice to meet you." Lucas smiled, ever the diplomat. "Thanks for having us." Dinner was a minefield. Claire chattered nervously about the lake, the hiking trails, the weather, anything but the past. Emily tried to keep up, asking Lucas about his work. Richard sat at the head of the table, silent, his fork scraping the plate. Ethan felt the weight of his father's gaze, probing, judging. "So," Richard said finally, his voice cutting through the clatter of dishes. "You're still doing this?" The words were vague, but their meaning was a blade. Ethan's fork froze midair. Lucas's hand found his knee under the table, steadying him. "Doing what, Dad?" Ethan's voice was low, dangerous. "Living my life. Being happy." Richard's eyes narrowed. "You know what I mean?" Claire's voice was sharp. "Richard, please." "No." Ethan snapped, standing. "Let him say it. Let's get this over with." The room went silent. Lucas's hand tightened on Ethan's. Richard leaned back, his face unreadable. "We'll talk tomorrow," he said finally. "Alone." Ethan wanted to refuse, to walk out, but something in his father's tone, a crack, a hint of something unspoken, held him back. "Fine," he said and sat down. That night, in the small guest room, Ethan lay beside Lucas, staring at the ceiling. "I shouldn't have come," he whispered. Lucas turned to him, his face soft in the moonlight. "You're stronger than you think. Whatever he says tomorrow, you've got me. You got us." Ethan clung to those words, but sleep didn't come. The past was a tide, pulling him under, and tomorrow felt like a reckoning. The morning sun spilled through the cabin's windows, painting the lake in shades of gold and blue. Ethan woke early, his body tense, his mind replaying his father's words. "We'll talk tomorrow." Alone, the weight of it pressed against his chest, a storm brewing beneath his ribs. Lucas was still asleep, his breathing steady, and Ethan slipped out of bed, needing air, needing space. Outside, the dock stretched over the water, its wood weathered but solid. Ethan walked to the end, the lake lapping softly beneath him. He remembered summers here as a kid, his father teaching him to fish, his mother's laughter, Emily's small hand in his as they chased fireflies. Those memories felt stolen now, tainted by the years of silence. He didn't hear Richard approach until his father's boots thudded against the dock. "Ethan," Richard said, his voice quieter than last night. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, his face shadowed by a baseball cap. "Thanks for coming." Ethan didn't turn. "Why am I here, Dad? What's this about?" Richard hesitated, the silence stretching like a taut wire. I owe you an apology." The words hit Ethan like a punch. He spun around, eyes narrowing. "An apology? After 6 years? You think that fixes it?" "No," Richard said quickly. "I don't, but I need you to hear me out." His voice cracked, just enough to make Ethan pause. Richard gestured to a bench nearby, and against his better judgment, Ethan sat. His father joined him, staring out the lake. "When you told me," Richard began, "I didn't understand. I thought it was a phase, something you'd outgrow. I was raised to believe certain things about family, about men. I was wrong, Ethan. I see that now." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to believe it, but the hurt was a wall, high and unyielding. "You didn't just not understand, Dad. You threw me out. You made me feel like I was nothing." Richard flinched, his hands gripping his knees. "I know, and I've hated myself for it every day since." He looked at Ethan then, his eyes raw, unguarded. "Your mother, she's been at me for years to fix this. Emily too. But it wasn't until I got sick last year, cancer, in remission now, that I realized how much I'd lost." Ethan froze. Cancer? His father, the unyielding Richard Harper, had been vulnerable? Mortal? "You never told me," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know how." Richard's shoulders sagged. "I thought you'd moved on, that you didn't need me. But I needed to see you to try." Ethan's mind reeled. He wanted to scream, to demand why Richard hadn't reached out sooner, why it took a brush with death to make him care. But something held him back. The way his father's hands shook, the way his voice carried a weight Ethan had never heard before. Before he could respond, Lucas appeared at the edge of the dock, his presence a quiet anchor. "Everything okay?" he asked, his eyes on Ethan. Richard stood, nodding stiffly. "We're not done," he said to Ethan, then walked back to the cabin. Lucas sat beside Ethan, their shoulders brushing. "What did he say?" "He's sorry," Ethan said, the words tasting foreign. "He had cancer. He wants to fix things." Lucas's eyes softened. "Do you believe him?" "I don't know." Ethan stared at the water, his heart a tangle of anger and hope. "But I'm not ready to forgive him. Not yet." The day unfolded in uneasy steps. Claire planned a hike, her cheerfulness a thin veil over the tension. Emily chattered about her job as a graphic designer, trying to bridge the gap. Richard kept his distance, but his eyes followed Ethan, heavy with something unspoken. Lucas stayed close, his hand brushing Ethan's when no one was looking, a reminder of what mattered. That afternoon, they kayaked across the lake, the water smooth as glass. Ethan and Lucas shared a kayak, their paddles slicing through the silence. For a moment, it was just them, the rhythm of their strokes, the warmth of Lucas's presence. Ethan felt a flicker of peace, fragile but real. But at dinner, the cracks resurfaced. Richard asked about Ethan's job, marketing for a tech startup, and Ethan answered curtly, unwilling to let his father in. When Richard mentioned a neighbor's son who'd come around to being straight, Ethan's fork hit the plate with a clatter. "Are you serious?" Ethan's voice was sharp, cutting through the room. "You think that's how this works? That I'll just come around?" Claire's face paled. "Ethan, he didn't mean..." "No, Mom. He meant it." Ethan stood, his chair scraping the floor. "You don't get to invite me here, say you're sorry, and then act like I'm broken." Richard's face reddened. "That's not what I said." "Then what are you saying?" Ethan demanded. "Because it sounds like you still don't get it." The silence was suffocating. Lucas reached for Ethan's hand, but Ethan pulled away, storming outside. The cool night air hit his face, and he leaned against the porch railing, his breath ragged. Lucas followed, silent, waiting. "I can't do this," Ethan said finally. "He hasn't changed. He's just scared of dying alone." Lucas stepped closer, his voice soft. "Maybe he hasn't changed enough. But you're here. You're facing him. That's not nothing." Ethan looked at him, the man who'd seen him at his worst, and stayed. "I don't know how to let him back in," he admitted. "You don't have to," Lucas said. "Not yet. But you're stronger than he is, Ethan. You always have been." The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of rain pattering against the cabin's roof. The gray light matched his mood, restless, heavy with the weight of last night's argument. He'd barely spoken to Richard since storming out, and the tension hung over the cabin like a storm cloud. Claire tried to keep things light, suggesting board games by the fire. Ethan played along, forcing smiles for her sake, but his eyes kept drifting to Richard, who sat reading a newspaper, his face a mask of stoicism. Lucas, ever perceptive, squeezed Ethan's hand under the table, a silent reminder to breathe. After lunch, Emily pulled Ethan aside. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice tentative. They stepped onto the covered porch, the rain a soft curtain around them. "I'm sorry," Emily said, her eyes glistening. "I should have reached out more. I was scared, Ethan. Dad was so angry, and I didn't know how to fix it." Ethan's chest tightened. "You were a kid, Em. It wasn't your job to fix him." "But I missed you," she said, her voice breaking. "I hated how he treated you. I hate that I didn't fight harder." Ethan pulled her into a hug, his own eyes stinging. "You're here now," he said. "That's enough." Their conversation shifted something in Ethan. Emily's regret, raw and honest, made him wonder if Richard's apology carried the same weight. But doubt lingered. 6 years of silence couldn't be erased by a single trip. That afternoon, the rain stopped, and Lucas suggested a walk to clear the air. They wandered a trail near the lake, the forest damp and alive with the scent of pine. Lucas's hand in Ethan's felt like an anchor, steadying him against the chaos of his thoughts. "You think I should give him a chance?" Ethan asked, kicking a pebble down the path. Lucas considered it, his hazel eyes thoughtful. "I think you should do what feels right for you. Not for him. Not for your mom or Emily. You." Ethan nodded, but the question gnawed at him. What did he want? Closure? Reconciliation? Or just to walk away, free of the past? When they returned, Richard was waiting on the porch, his posture stiff. "Ethan, can we try again?" he asked, his voice low. Ethan hesitated, glancing at Lucas, who gave a small nod. "Okay," Ethan said. "But no more games, Dad. Say what you mean." They walked to the dock again, the lake still under the gray sky. Richard cleared his throat, his hands fidgeting. "I was wrong," he said. "Not just about you being gay. About everything. I thought I was protecting you, saving you from I don't know, a hard life. But I was the one making it hard." Ethan's heart pounded. "You made me feel like I wasn't enough. Like I was a disappointment." Richard's face crumpled. "You were never a disappointment. I was scared, Ethan. Scared of what I didn't understand. Scared of losing you to a world I couldn't control. But I lost you anyway." The words hit Ethan hard, cracking the wall he'd built. He wanted to lash out, to make Richard feel the weight of those years, but something stopped him. His father's eyes were wet, his voice raw with a vulnerability Ethan had never seen. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Ethan said honestly. "But I'm listening." Richard nodded, his relief palpable. "That's all I ask." That evening, the family sat by the fire, the mood lighter but still fragile. Lucas told stories about his kids at the community center, making Emily laugh and even drawing a smile from Richard. Ethan watched his father, searching for signs of the man who'd rejected him. He wasn't sure what he saw. Regret? Maybe, or a flicker of change. As the night wound down, Ethan and Lucas slipped outside to the dock, the stars bright above the lake. Ethan leaned against Lucas, his head on his shoulder. "I don't know what to do with this," he admitted. "He's trying, but it doesn't erase anything." Lucas kissed his forehead. "You don't have to decide now. You've got time." Ethan clung to that, the promise of time, as the lake whispered around them. For the first time, he felt a spark of hope, not for his father, but for himself. The fourth day dawned bright, the lake sparkling under a clear sky. Ethan felt lighter, as if the rain had washed away some of his anger. Richard's words on the dock lingered, a fragile thread connecting them, but Ethan wasn't ready to pull it taut. Not yet. Claire planned a boat trip, her enthusiasm almost desperate. Ethan watched her fuss over sandwiches and sunscreen, her hands trembling slightly. She'd always been caught in the middle, loving her son, loyal to her husband. Ethan wanted to ease her burden, but he didn't know how. On the boat, the family spread out, the hum of the motor filling the silences. Lucas sat beside Ethan, their knees touching, a quiet reassurance. Emily snapped photos, her laughter bright. Richard steered, his face relaxed for the first time, the lake stretching endless before them. Halfway across, Richard cut the engine, letting the boat drift. "This was your favorite spot as a kid," he said, looking at Ethan. "You'd beg to swim here every summer." Ethan's chest tightened. He remembered those days, diving into the cool water, his father's rare smile. "Yeah," he said softly. "I remember." Richard's eyes held his, a silent plea. "I want to make new memories, Ethan, if you'll let me." The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Ethan didn't respond, but he didn't look away either. Lucas's hand found his, grounding him. That afternoon, they docked at a small cove, and Ethan and Lucas wandered off, finding a quiet spot among the pines. They sat on a fallen log, the lake shimmering through the trees. "He's trying," Ethan said, his voice low, "but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." Lucas nodded. "Trust takes time. You don't owe him anything, but you're here. That's a start." Ethan leaned into him, their lips meeting in a soft, lingering kiss. The forest felt like a sanctuary, shielding them from the weight of the past. For a moment, it was just them, Ethan and Lucas, their love a quiet defiance. Back at the cabin, dinner was quieter, the tension easing like a tide receding. Richard asked Lucas about his family, his questions careful but genuine. Ethan watched, wary but curious, as his father listened, nodding thoughtfully. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Later, Ethan found Richard alone on the porch, staring at the stars. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said, his voice steady. Richard turned, surprised. "Of course." "Why now?" Ethan asked. "Why this trip? Why me?" Richard took a deep breath. "When I was sick, I thought about you every day. I thought about the years I'd thrown away, the things I'd said. I thought I'd lost my chance to make it right. This trip, it's my way of trying. I know it's not enough, but it's all I've got." Ethan's throat burned. He saw his father not as the unyielding man of his childhood, but as someone flawed, human, scared. "I don't know if I can trust you," Ethan said. "But I'm here. That's something." Richard's eyes glistened. "It's more than I deserve." That night, Ethan lay awake, Lucas's warmth beside him. The cabin was quiet, the lake a soft murmur outside. Ethan felt the past and present colliding, his anger softening, not gone, but less sharp. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to find out. The final day of the trip arrived too quickly, the lake aglow with the soft light of dawn. Ethan stood on the dock, coffee in hand, watching the mist curl over the water. The week had been a whirlwind, anger, hope, and moments of quiet connection weaving together into something he couldn't yet name. Lucas joined him, their shoulders brushing. "You okay?" he asked, his voice warm. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, I think so." The family gathered for breakfast, the air lighter than it had been. Claire's smiles were less forced, Emily's laughter freer. Richard sat across from Ethan, his eyes softer, less guarded. After breakfast, he asked Ethan to walk with him one last time. They followed a trail into the woods, the air cool and sharp. Richard spoke first. "I've been thinking about what you said about trust. I know I haven't earned it, but I want to, Ethan. I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me." Ethan stopped, his heart pounding. "It's not that simple, Dad. You hurt me. You made me feel like I didn't belong. I built a life without you, and it's a good one. I have Lucas, friends, a job I love. I don't need you to fix me." Richard's face fell, but he nodded. "I don't want to fix you. I want to know you. The man you are now, not the boy I pushed away." Ethan's eyes stung. He saw his father's regret, raw and unguarded, and for the first time, he believed it. "Okay," he said finally. "We could try, but it's going to take time." Richard's relief was palpable, a shaky breath escaping him. "I've got time." They walked back in silence, the weight of the moment settling between them. At the cabin, Lucas was waiting, his smile a quiet reassurance. Ethan took his hand, feeling the strength of their bond, a love that had carried him through the darkest years. As they packed to leave, Claire hugged Ethan tightly, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." Emily promised to visit Brooklyn, her eyes bright with plans. Richard stood by the SUV, his expression hesitant but hopeful. "Can I call you?" he asked. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, you can call." The drive back to Brooklyn was quiet, the Adirondacks fading in the rearview mirror. Lucas reached for Ethan's hand, their fingers intertwining. "You did good," Lucas said. Ethan smiled, his heart full. "We did good." Back in their apartment, Ethan placed a photo from the trip, a candid shot of him and Lucas on the dock, laughing, beside the letter from his father. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, no perfect reconciliation, but it was a beginning, a fragile bridge built on truth and time. Ethan had faced his past, not for his father, but for himself. And with Lucas by his side, he knew he could face anything.